The question that we put up, well, perhaps I can switch this on.
Yeah.
When is it a crime to pay tax? Now, I've given you a copy of what I'm about to say so that you can take it away with you and think about it in depth later. My main purpose today really is to get at the truth behind the government's lies. We have been lied to for more than 50 years by our government and when they say that war is legal. I want to give you the facts to show you that war is never legal and that we have been conned and deceived, and as a result of that deception we have fought 17 wars since 1953. So while the Queen has been on the throne as Commander-in-Chief of our armed forces, she has authorised the use of armed force overseas at least 17 times, nearer 21 actually, but in those 60 years she has caused the death of somewhere between 8 and 12 million people. And the real issue behind all of this is that we as taxpayers are the people who pay for it all. And as taxpayers, we are criminally liable under international law for aiding and abetting the crimes that have taken place in those 17 wars. So, very briefly then, it's a salutary fact that every time a resident or visitor to Britain purchases a cup of coffee or buys a drink in a pub, we make a small but significant contribution to war and the mass murder of innocent men, women and children. Well, many people know it, but every time we pay tax, we take part in the world's worst crimes. Crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes against peace. Under the domestic and international laws of war, citizens are forbidden from taking part in a war on the side of the aggressor and are legally bound to disobey the orders of any government that takes part in illegal war or support acts of genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes. This duty to refuse to obey unlawful orders includes orders to pay tax, income tax, council tax, VAT, and importantly for students, it is a criminal offence to repay your loans from the government to the government while it is waging war. Any source of money which contributes to the British government waging war overseas, killing innocent people, is a crime. And that's been so since October the 7th, 2001 in this country. The actual criminal offence came into place, and I'll tell you about it a bit later, after the Second World War. So, the key statement I want to draw attention to comes from the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunal, which took place after the Second World War. The judgment said, when convicting Germany's leaders, the very essence of the Charter is that individuals have international duties which transcend the national obligations of obedience imposed by the individual state. He who violates the laws of war cannot obtain immunity while acting in pursuance of the authority of the state if the state, in authorizing action, moves outside its competence under international law. War is never lawful. It was banned in 1928. Now, that's a piece of information that has been carefully kept from everybody in this country for the last 60, 70 years. How many people had heard about, before they came here, the Kellogg Pact? Can I just check? Has anyone ever heard of the Kellogg Pact or the Treaty for the Renunciation of War? It's the single most important law ever devised by the international community, and it was brought out in 1928 as a result of the First World War. the important bit about it is that it formed the legal basis for the Nuremberg war crimes trials. So when Germany's leaders fought the Second World War and invaded and occupied 11 European nation states, they were convicted at the end of that war for 11 crimes against the Kellogg Pact. The reason it came about was that they said, well, we were just following orders. Hitler started these wars and we were following orders. And the judges said, no, that's not good enough. People have a duty to humankind that is greater than your duty to your national state, particularly when that state breaches international law. And so really the important issue underlying it was that Germany had completely ignored the Treaty for the Renunciation of War, and Germany's leaders were held to account in court for breaching that law, and they did not get away with their defense, which was, they said, we were only following orders. That's a very important thing for us to keep in mind because it applies now. It applied then and it has applied ever since. The only occasion when the use of armed force is lawful occurs when a state is under attack and it acts in self-defense to repel the attackers. On all other occasions, the use of armed force is illegal. Now, that was clarified by Henry Stimson, who said, war between nations was renounced by the signatories of the Kellogg Treaty. This means it has become throughout practically the entire world an illegal thing. Hereafter, when nations engage in armed conflict, either one or both of them must be termed violators of this general treaty law. We denounce them as lawbreakers. That was in 1932. Unfortunately, our leaders have forgotten this completely. It's also important to point out that willful killing during war is a crime. If a person is killed as a consequence of an aggressive military action, then the death is unlawful. Everyone involved in the commission of the crime commits an offence and can be charged with a war crime, a crime against humanity, genocide, a crime against peace, murder, or complicity in these crimes. Now, the important bit is to understand that when war is illegal, paying tax is the crucial issue that is a crime, because it's that money that pays for the war. Without tax coming in, the government cannot fight a war. In international law, every one of the wars fought since 2001 against Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya, and Syria is illegal. Not only do they violate the Kellogg Pact and the UN Charter, but the important thing is, by killing civilians, the leaders and taxpayers of every state involved in these wars committed murder, crimes against peace, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. It's those 5 crimes coming up. Under the common law doctrine of joint enterprise, this is where 2 or more people get together and commit a crime. Article 25 of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, or terrorism legislation, every citizen of a NATO state who has paid tax since 2001 is technically an accessory to the crimes committed by their government, and is criminally liable for arrest, prosecution, and punishment for the commission of war crime, complicity in war crimes. It's this issue that most people do not understand. The fact that taxpayers and tax collectors can be arrested, tried and punished as war criminals alongside the civil, political and military leaders responsible for waging a war comes as an unwelcome shock to most people. But it should be no surprise to anyone who has experienced or considered the horrific consequences of waging war. Tens of thousands of totally innocent men, women and children are injured and killed always, and it's the world's most evil act. So supporting a war by paying tax and providing the funds to buy the weapons and pay the troops ranks alongside it as a monstrous crime. Luckily, however, taxpayers who have unwittingly supported illegal wars will be relieved to know the legislation provides you with a get-out clause. And I say you because we've all paid for these wars, whether we've intended to or not. We've paid VAT, we've paid taxes of all sorts, and we still do. Article 25(3)(f) of the Roman Statute says clearly, a person who abandons the effort to commit the crime or otherwise prevents the completion of the crime shall not be liable for punishment under this statute for the attempt to commit that crime if that person completely and voluntarily gave up the criminal purpose. So, providing we end our participation in the crimes and refuse to pay tax, we will not be punished. To avoid the possibility of being tried and punished as an accessory to war crimes, it's important to sign a declaration withdrawing your consent to taxation until all unlawful military actions have ended and the UK government is abiding by its treaty commitments and the laws of war. If you continue to pay tax whilst Her Majesty's forces and our allies in NATO are attacking and killing innocent civilians, a war